Hello and welcome to SeeNoBounds Live, and I'm very pleased to be here with Sam Hollis, who we haven't met in person before.
No, it's
because
great.
you live in Mozambique most of the time. So really glad to have you here. So how long have you been back in the UK now?
About 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Another week or so to go.
And you're having the lovely sort of rainy weather as well. But today is going to be all about podcasts. Today we're going to talk about Shoot to the Top. So first of all, how did it come about?
Well, I met my co-host Marcus online, and we got chatting, and we both kind of were looking to talk to similar people. We were both looking to talk to photographers. He was looking to develop photographer training. I, with the photography websites, was looking to talk to photographers. So we both we got chatting. We had a few one-to-ones, and it sort of came up, well, why don't we do a podcast? Because we kind of could help photographers. He's got the experience in the industry. He's been in the industry since he was, since he graduated many years ago. And I kind of had the marketing, the website side, and we thought there's quite a lot we can bring here to photographers and really help, and it would be really interesting. So
yeah, I'm going to give Marcus a massive shout out actually, because he's a fantastic photographer that's worked in all different areas of photography and also been a lecturer.
Yeah,
and he's worked with people like Kate Moss, the sort of that fashion industry. So he's gone from fashion to lecturer to branding to lots of different insights. And I know that your father was actually a photographer, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he was Mike Hollis Video and Photography over in Cheshire. And so he was doing that. And I helped him with that, and I was carrying around the bags and all that sort of thing.
So it's still a massive passion for you.
Yeah, no, so especially where I live in Mozambique, we've got all the game parks close by, so we go and take the huge lens and go out and shoot all the wildlife and stuff and the birds, and that's so much fun.
Oh, and I love photography myself, massive. But we're gonna talk a little bit, because I was actually a guest, from the perspective of why you should have brand photography done, and what the importance is, and that's where you come in with your expertise about branding photography and the website. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Why should you update your photographs on the website? Why is that important?
Well, there's a few things. It depends where you're starting from with the photographs on your website. So if you're starting from just stock, then definitely photographs of you on there, and then usually the next level up is people have got their phone and gone snap, and usually it's really obvious, isn't it, when people have done that? It's kind of down here or up there, and it's dark light, and it just doesn't look professional. If you're trying to get across a professional image of you, then you can't do it like that. So you need, as a minimum, some really good professional headshots of you just to get across who you are, and that's a kind of basic. But up from there, if you can get shots of you working in your business, working with people, having meeting, get a friend in and you're pretending to have a meeting with them. I did that. I did a photo shoot and I got my next door neighbour in and we pretended to have a chat about a website. Get some other people in, so you're interacting with people, get some shots like that, just so there's you doing stuff, doing what you do. And for some people that's easier than others, isn't it? If you do weaving, you can get some amazing shots. But if you're sat at a desk, it's a bit harder, but you can still be with a cup of coffee and relax.
But that actually brings me back, because a lot about the podcast as well is about the fact that you, as photographers, you often showcase, obviously, your photography, but you sometimes forget about the content and things, which is what the podcast is all about. You often have other photographers that come on as guests. Is that right?
No, so we speak to people who, like you, who have sort of used photographers and work with photographers, but we also speak to photographers themselves. And they, they're all experienced photographers and bring hints and tips and stuff they've learned in business that other photographers can learn from.
I think it's fantastic, because it's so many different sort of areas of expertise that comes out in the podcast that you can learn about from both any business owner, from what's important, why you should update your website, why you should, not use stock images. And for those of you that don't know what stock images is, if you take stock images from somewhere like Canva, you can actually see how many times that's been used, and that would be millions. So it's basic, isn't it? But it's really hard when you first start out. So I think that's a massive sort of top tip. What other sort of top tips would you like to sort of share around photography, and that you share in the podcast as well?
So I think we talked already about, you need to make sure you've got professional photographs on your website. In terms of for photographers themselves, I mean, for photographers, I think it's telling the story behind the photographs. Well, how much work have you done before? What I've learned from the podcast and talking to photographers is actually how little of a photographer's work is being behind the camera.
Yeah.
And I thought when we started the podcast, it was going to be a lot talking about the lens and the the lighting, and actually that's such a small part. When we talk, it's about those human interactions and the work beforehand and the work afterwards and the relationships.
I think that's a really good point, because then I'm going to give a shout out to the makeover that I had, which was for Steffi Andrews. And the one top tip that I think I said on the podcast as well is the behind the scenes beforehand. So she knew my size, she knew how tall I am, and she actually went over and got sort of a range of clothes for the 4 women that were there on the day that we could utilize for the day, which is massive. I mean, that's great service, right? And then it was other sort of things, thinking about the different locations that you can utilize within the space or where you're located. So it's not just sitting in one place, because it's going to be very obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all been done on one day. So, but we've had massive sort of photo shoots here in the office as well, where we, working away, like you said, we borrowed the neighbours to come in. So there's lots of different people coming in. And I think it doesn't have to be that hard. But the whole point of the top tip is that the photographers need to sort of get to know their customers beforehand, and that's the amount of work they do.
It is, and they need to get that across as well in their website. Tell people how much work they do. Make it clear that they don't just turn up, camera comes out the back of the van and off they go.
I think people forget that. A lot. They think that it's just the camera on the day. But if you're working with a good photographer, then they should do some research beforehand. And how much they do is obviously varies from person to person. But I think it's really, really good top tip. So what are we going to see in the future on the podcast?
We've got a few things come up. We've managed to get an award-winning photographer who's had exhibitions in London and things come on the podcast. So she's going to talk about kind of the world of sort of art photography a little bit. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
We've got, more photographers lined up from all sorts of different areas. And then, more people using photographers. That's kind of our key, is there's shows with Marcus and I where we kind of bring our specialities, and then we bring in photographers who share their experience. And then, people who work with photographers. We've got, in fact, I think the next guest coming up is a stylist. So that's really interesting to see how he can work with people having photo shoots and how that can work together.
Yeah, I love it, because I think collaboration, as you know, is key to success. And I think photographers sometimes forget that, because it's quite a competitive industry. Yeah. So collaborating with all different other photographers, sharing the tips and sharing the content that you do on the podcast, I think is fantastic.
No, there's no need to be scared of the other people. They're often not competition, are they? I have the same thing. You walk into a networking room, and yes, there's usually a couple of photographers and a few website designers, and the key is not to say, oh my God, there's the enemy. But talk to them, and you usually find they're doing things slightly different to you. They've got slightly different customers, and often you can work together and cross-refer for people who aren't relevant to you, and you might need an extra shooter on a day, so you can work with them. And people, you're right, working with people instead of seeing them as the enemy is much
absolutely
better.
And that's what SeeNoBounds is built on, basically, because people buy from people. And we've actually, because we work with a lot of different photographers, which is also, you need to listen out for this episode now, it will be in the notes below, but we work with a lot of different photographers for different things. So you might sort of have the makeover day with one photographer, and then you have a shoot in the office with somebody else, and the quality the quality is always excellent, but it's very different scenarios, and I think that's important. So really great top tips, Sam. So we're looking forward to seeing a lot more episodes coming up. And obviously check out the notes so you can listen out. All the podcasts are on the SeeNoBounds website as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a fabulous guest. And we look forward to seeing you very soon again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.